Hello, thank you so much for joining the Save Our Descendants Facebook page. We are here to support anyone who is suffering with depression. And today we have a very special guest by the name of Dr. Valerie Simpson. She is a senior associate pastor at Kingdom Apostolic Ministries in Detroit, Michigan. By profession, she is the chaplain with Guardian Angel Hospice. She is blessed to be the wife of Elder Daniel Simpson, the mother of 4 adult children, and a grandmother of 8 life-enriching grandchildren. And above all, she cherishes her walk with the Lord Jesus Christ. She is the author of Breathe, a guide to coping mechanisms and strategies. And we are so happy to have her here today. So with that, we're going to start it off with Dr. Valerie Simpson. Can you say her name feedback from the people who've read?
Sure. The feedback has come from men and women. It has come from the millennials. It has come from the elders. It's come from a lot from the baby boomers. So it's touched everyone because it's not just death, because you grieve a lot. You grieve every day at some level. There are various levels of grief and a number of different types of grief. So we grieve every day. It's just a matter of how we handle it. But some of the feedback that I got was similar to my own writing chapter number 1, where a gentleman told me that by the time they got to that end of that first chapter, they said, I was in tears, heavily in tears, because I had not fully grieved the murder of my brother and the loss of my mother and another family member. So they were able to allow themselves to release that anxiety and that grief. And they said it was like, the name of the book is Breathe, and it was like taking a breath or exhaling and releasing. So yeah, and then others too. So I could keep talking, but
I love it. I love it. I do. So what has been the any of the reaction from like your church family as well?
oh yeah, I was very transparent. So a lot of them know me as associate pastor or Dr. Valerie Simpson, or they know me from being an evangelist on the field, but they also know I'm a chaplain. And so I was very transparent about some things that happened many, many years ago. And because I put it out there the way that I did, some of the younger ones, the millennials, said they were hurt because they said, you never know what a person has been through. You have no idea some of the things that people have lived through, and it makes you treat them differently, or it should. But they said that's what the younger ones were telling me. They had no idea. So that was from the church, and most of them pretty much expressed that.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I'm going to bring on my co-host, Miss Teresa Kelly, to see if she has any questions that she has for you as well.
Well, it's such a I guess you could say it weirdly engaging subject. You know, speaking about grief. I experienced grief very young in my life. I was 7, and the oldest of 3 kids that, you know, with my mom and my dad. And my mother died at 31 from a massive stroke. And of course, at 7, you're not really understanding a lot, you know, of what's going on. And we ended up living with my grandmother, who was my mom's mom, and my mom's sister. And they were just, you know, absolutely the very best seconds, you know, we could have as far as, you know, helping us and raising us. And my dad was also in the picture, but it was really just a kind of confusing state, I would say, you know, from, you know, being, I guess, from probably about 7 up to, you know, maybe about 12 or 13. And that's when, you know, also thank God for the church, because that helped me gain some perspective as I was growing into my teen years. And you sort of understood, from a Christian perspective, what all that means. And it helped me put it together better. And I will tell you, it's been like 54 years since, my mother passed. And of course, we've had other losses in my family as well. But have you noticed in, maybe in writing your book, or, I know your personal story probably guided you in it, but were there any like consistencies with, how people feel, or maybe how they get over things, or, learn to live with the grief?
Well, I did find some variations actually. There were people that I know experienced very, very severe losses during the pandemic. And their losses were all coming together. It was kind of like one thing after another. And very devastating and sudden. Before you can even wrap your mind around the idea that you're about to take a loss, they took two major losses. And their response was they read the book, but they said that they felt more compassion for one of the people that had been separated, or it's called detached. That this chapter is called detached, and they focused in on that chapter. And when I tell you it makes a difference, this individual lost their husband and their son just less than 2 weeks apart. So can you imagine feeling detached? So it's just a matter of which chapter is applying to their life at that time. And so this chapter spoke to them. So that was that particular individual. Another person, it was, the chapter about my mom, and that was chapter 8. So in that one, that's when the young man was telling me that that was when he just couldn't move any further, and it was called Living Your Best Life. So he responded to that one, and a lot of people responded to chapter number 1, but I found a lot more people attaching themselves to chapter 4, which is detox. So if you think about that, we can get toxins in our spirit and in our hearts and in our thoughts just based on what we go through. So it varied. It varied. Yeah. If I had to put a consistency there, I would say it was consistent with what they were going through, which a chapter really resonated with them. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, that was a great question. Great question. So I'm sure that your book includes how people can cope with Jesus Christ. So can you tell us the importance of people having Jesus in their lives when going through grief?
Yeah. Well, actually, with the workbook, I kind of, as I was praying one day, it just began to fall upon my heart to familiarize myself with the books of poetry in the Bible. So the books of poetry being Psalms, Job, you think about some of the things David said. I have fainted, except I believe to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. When my mother and father forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. Think about Job, the wicked shall cease from troubling, and the weary shall be at rest. I think another one he said was, man was born for trouble as the sparks fly upward. So he begins to speak about it. And then if you go to the book of Lamentations, which to me seems to be one of the most poignant images of mental anguish and emotional suffering, in that book, he starts it off by saying, after he gets back to Jerusalem and it's all burnt down, he says, how is it that a city that was so busy and active and bustling and full of life, how is it laid in ruins? How is this happening? And so if you think about it, consider Ukraine, right? We think
Right.
about Ukraine, it was bustling. They said it was beautiful, whatever we say, wherever we live, it was their home. And so now it's laid in ruins. And so I began to get that, to go into the books of poetry and to write that out. And so, having the Lord in my life, these stories began to really connect to me that God was allowing me to be, like I say, a fly on the wall. So I could hear this person complaining to the Lord, and giving out their complaint and pouring their heart out and openly grieving, and their words, they were so eloquent. If you read it, I guarantee you will connect your feelings with what they're saying. They were so eloquent. And then you get to see how they pour themselves out, which helps you to say, I need to be more, out, all this, Father, as we pray, it's another story.
Right.
I'm going to pour my heart out. I'm going to speak what's on my mind. And I'm going
That's
to lay it at your feet with everything that I have in me. And then the beauty of it was, then you see how the Lord responds and you see the outcomes. So having the Lord in my life, and with this book and writing with the workbook, it can go as far and as deep as you need it to go, because every book is going to give you, of those books of poetry, it's going to give you so many scenarios. You will not go through that book and not find yourself. You will not go through Psalms and not find yourself. You will not go through Lamentations and not find yourself. Even Ecclesiastes.
mm,
It says that grief, it says that with much knowledge comes grief, and
mm.
much wisdom comes sorrow. And it just makes sense of the pain, the sorrow, and the grief, because it turns out, or it results in, wisdom and knowledge. So having the Lord in my life and going through those books, it helped me. It helped me straighten, square my shoulders a little bit.
That is amazing because we all know that everything that we go through in this life is in the Word of God.
Everything.
And it's even more amazing that even the grief that we go through, we see that there's people in the Bible during that Bible times went through the same thing. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing new under the sun at all. So
Mm-hmm.
we can apply, like you said, reading those different chapters, we can apply it to ourselves and see where we can get something out of it.
Oh yeah,
Correct?
he says there has no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. Somebody else has been through it, and when you start reading and you find yourself connecting to people that God wanted on record forever, and you find out that they were just as human as you are, that
Wow.
they were just as passionate as you are, and unsuspecting. I mean, we can look at Job. Job had nothing to do with that conversation, right? He just
Right.
all of a sudden, God said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And the enemy said, "Well, let me take the hedge out from around him."
Mhm.
So, it just goes to show you the enemy is cruel. And so it should, if nothing else, make you fall to your knees and say, I am so glad that I am on the Lord's side. I am so
Exactly.
glad that I am in your hands and you're responsible for my life.
Exactly. So, do you also address depression, like grief leading into depression? Do you also address that in your book?
Yes, and depression is one of the things that kind of is a byproduct of grief, because grief is when you begin to feel very, very bad. That's a basic definition of grief. Having a very bad feeling you're grieving. I mean, somebody can say something to you, and you get a very sour feeling and a heaviness. That's a level of grief. And then there may be somebody cut you off in traffic, and it's just like, you could have made me had an accident. And that's a level of grief. And then there's the phone call in the middle of the night, and that's another level of grief. So one of the things that I put in the workbook was it's called the Holmes and Rahe scale of stress, and it talks about different levels of stress, and it gives every one of these different stressors It gives them a number. With death of a spouse being at the top, giving
Mm.
the full 100 points, and then with minor violations of the law being at the very bottom and only being 11, and then right in the middle would be foreclosure on a mortgage.
So
Foreclosure.
where does a parent?
Okay, so then separation, death of a close family member is 63 points.
Wow.
So they're saying that if you have less than 150 points, you're dealing with the average amount of stress. But if you're between 50 and 300, there's a 50% chance of a health breakdown in your life over the next 2 years. Because how long can you deal with this stress, and how long can you endure this heaviness? Because it changes your chemistry. It makes your body release chemicals that were meant to protect you, but an overload will suppress your immune system and many other things. How long can you be sad before you just lose esteem and will, to go forward and begin to feel defeated? So, but if it says if you have over 300 points, there's an 80% chance that you're going to have a health breakdown in the next 2 years. And
Mm.
according to them, it's a good, predictable model, and it does make sense. So that's why I do talk about grief, and I talk about depression, and how it's important to understand you're going to grieve. That's normal. Life will bring situations. The thing that we want to do is manage that grief. Learn how to manage the grief and not let your emotions run wild or just go unchecked. Deal with them and manage it. So that was for the sake of giving people an understanding that depression will come. So in one of my chapters, I put down, I think it's number 4, I talk about the depression being that's the one about detox. And then you have to realize, am I becoming toxic emotionally? Are my thoughts all heavy? Am I getting to the place where I'm losing balance? You're going to have sorrow. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. Am I starting to have more bad days now? So you
Right.
have to really take an assessment, and then there's another chapter called triage where you actually do take an assessment. So there's so much in that. Um, I will just say this about assessing yourself: um, is to stop and be still, and to
Mhm.
think about what is overwhelming me right now, and what is the heaviest thing weighing on me? And is this something that could destroy me? This light is doing what it wants to do over here. Is it something that could destroy me, or is it something that is even necessary? Am I overwhelmed about something that is nonsense, or is this something that is near and dear to me and needs to be careful? So you have to think about those kind of things. That will help you to start to separate some of the things that you give your attention to. And then the ones that really mean a lot to you, you're going to start to assess why it's troubling you and why it's so heavy, and what is the worst thing that can come out of it, and what are your options on dealing with it. So you really have to think your way through it.
Oh
There's
yeah.
so much I could say about it.
So you mentioned managing, and we know that that's a form of managing the depression. But do you also suggest and recommend therapy, professional therapy?
Absolutely. There is a level of grief that's called complicated grief. And that's for the person that, let's say you got that bad phone call and it broke you. It just really hurt you. Or just anything in your life that was just in the back of your mind, something you never thought could happen, but it happened. And you're starting to say, it's reality. This really did happen.
Yeah.
And so it's on my plate, and it's a part of what has happened to me. And then you can't get past that terrible reality that this has occurred, and I'm stuck now. I'm
Mhm.
crying as much now, 5 years later, as I was the day when
Mhm.
I got the call. I
Right.
am feeling just as defeated today as I was the day I walked out of divorce court. I'm just as hopeless in a sense right now as I was the day I lost my child. Uh-oh, am I still there? You got me?
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry
down
about
in the
that.
corner.
There you
I
go.
thought it was me.
Sorry about that.
So when you get there and you can't get past that point, the main thing is to know that you are to grieve. You
Mhm.
need to grieve. You need to give yourself permission to grieve, allow yourself to grieve. But after that, you have to regain control and decide this doesn't just get to be the lifestyle that I'm going to live every day from sun up to sundown, all day long, going through this cycle of sorrow and um, sadness and, depression. So, yeah, yeah.
We appreciate that, man. That was great information. Now,
Really.
where can people find your book and this workbook? And are they sold as a companion to one another, or are they sold pretty much separately under different titles? Can you explain to us how they can get the book?
Absolutely. Sure. The book is called is Breathe, and you can't see it because the words are white going down the middle. And you may see it a little bit if I angle it a little. But it's called Breathe. So that's the paperback book, and this is the one with the empirical studies and research and examples of suffering and pain, which really will match what is in the workbook. And the workbook is the one that I talked about that contains, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it contains scales and things for you to measure your grief by. It also contains information that will cover the reasons why people grieve. Um, and then there is a curriculum. So there is a 13-week curriculum is why we wrote this book. So um, people could actually go through the process. So I've done some master classes and I've done some workshops and just had opportunities to do sessions with people. Now the workbook is separate from the print book because they may not want to do both.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So the print book
Boy.
and the workbook, and it is an audible form. So if you
Oh,
don't have
great.
time to read, just they're all on Amazon. The workbook they're all on Amazon. The print and the ebook and the workbook are on Amazon. You can also get the Audible book on Amazon, or you can go
Great.
to audible.com. So if you're audible.com a member, there you can get the book for one of your credits. And the book you can go through in 3 hours and 7 minutes. So it's not going to take you a long time, but that would just be to go through it. But
Hmm.
you will find yourself going over stories over and over again. So that is on iTunes, Amazon, and audible.com. And
Awesome. Awesome. And I'll make sure to include a link in with this recording too, to make
wonderful.
sure that people put it on the page, the Facebook page, so people will see it
Okay.
for
Wonderful.
Audible as well as to Amazon as well, because
Yeah.
it sounds like a great book that is needed in every household.
Yes.
Needed around the world right now. We're in a
Yes.
very, very difficult time
Yes,
in
we are.
history. We're living in very difficult time. And we always said that we're living in the last days, but I think
Hmm.
everybody is going to agree with us, right? That right now we're living in a terrible time. It's a terrible time
Yes.
in our world. So much cruelty, so much pain. And so everybody, it's a book that should be in everyone's home. And then when you're riding down the street, instead of listening to the same songs or the same podcast, play the book and go through that. And in the book, you will get coping mechanisms, strategies. It will tell you things when you think you've hit your lowest point, you may just want to be prepared to take another hit and how to deal with that. And then it's not about just saying, oh, I've been through this, I've been through that. We could talk about that and beat that drum for a long time, but it's talking about how to manage it and to get past it. And again, your question was earlier that depression. If they're getting to the place, or if you're getting to the place where you can't seem to get past a certain area, go to a therapist because likely they will help you to talk your way through it. A Christian therapist probably help you pray your way through it. Some of these stories in the Bible will help you to imagine your way through it, and just so much information. So yes, I am very much for a therapist. So that's it in a nutshell. Any other
Awesome.
questions? Feel free to ask.
Do you have any, Teresa?
Well, I mean, I am just, totally taken by, because I think that just even the way you describe your book being laid out, those, scenarios, and then to have that type of data, to back up, it's a real issue. And, I think this is a great tool in, probably conducting small groups and more intimate settings and things like that, because just like you were saying, grief touches everybody. I don't care, your stage or station in life. If you watch the news for 5 minutes, like you were just stating, I mean, if you are that type of compassionate person, you will find yourself grieving over the troubles of the world, literally. And
Yeah,
it's so nice that there is, you know, I guess you could say like I don't want to say a program, but there are some tools, available for use, to be able to
absolutely.
do that. Because
Absolutely. And you made a good point there. Some of the things on the news. Let me tell you, long before I wrote this book, before I even went back to get my doctorate degree, we had Hurricane. Oh my gosh, how could I forget the hurricane down in Louisiana?
yes, I
Oh my
can't
God.
remember the name myself.
Katrina.
Katrina. Yes, that was horrible.
And I was just looking at the news, and they showed a wheelchair draped with a black blanket, meaning that that person had lost it. And I tell you, I dropped my studies, what I was doing. I had to go and lay on my face and just weep. So
Hmm.
it's easy to do that when you see certain images. It's easy and not even know you're carrying that grief. So, yeah, we need to realize it is real. It can be managed. We can get through this if we just use the tools and the mechanisms and the strategies that are available. So, thus the name of the book, Breathe, a guide to coping mechanisms and strategies. Be sure to put in there by Dr. Valerie Simpson, because if you put in Valerie Simpson, you'll get somebody else that's very, very popular. So, I don't want you to go looking for me under her.
She's doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Valerie Simpson is
That's
me,
right.
and not the other Valerie Simpson.
Yes, we acknowledge those titles because you worked very hard on earning that
You
doctorate.
remember that, don't you?
I do. I do.
I tell you, they had me on lockdown. My mind was like, I am crying all night long because they kept saying, no, 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 that's not right. That you really need to correct that. You need to really develop that more, and this is not appropriate. Well, tell me what's not appropriate and what you don't like about it. They don't do that. They let you flounder. So, but we worked hard for it. But it was all,
Oh yeah.
it turns out, all for the kingdom, to
Yes,
help
sure was.
God's
Yes.
people. And
Yes.
so, I do this. I'll be putting videos out. I'll be putting teachings out. I'll be putting information out there about master classes, so people will be able to get involved as much as they desire.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. And we just pray for your ministry to continue to grow. In Jesus' name, it's going to grow, and so many people are going to be blessed by your book. So, do you have any closing thoughts or any encouraging words to anyone
I
as we
will
close?
I will say this, life, this is the way life works. We get disappointed, we get overwhelmed, and we feel like we've been picked out, just to be the one with the bad life. And why did this have to happen to me? This is the way life works. And actually, it always results in some level of elevation, some level of increase, and some level of blessings. So endure it. It will not always be this way. It won't last forever. It will pass over. And listen, when God comes back, he gives you beauty for ashes, which means I'm going to pay you for everything you went through, and I'm going to give you a scenario that you never imagined. As bad as it is right now, and your tears are so heavy, the joy is going to bring so much laughter and so much lightheartedness to you again. You will laugh again. You will rejoice again. Everything's going to be all right. Hang in there. Use the mechanisms and the tools available. and you will survive and you'll help somebody else. So that would be it.
Amen. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this. I'm going to go back and listen to this over and over. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies. I appreciate
Yes,
it very much.
Thank you for sharing.
most definitely. Most definitely. Okay. I will close now.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank everyone for being a part of this discussion. And if you have any comments or questions that you have, please leave them in the comment area under this video, because I'm sure Dr. Valerie Simpson, as well as Teresa and myself, would love to hear your feedback on this and whether or not this blessed your soul. So just let us know, and we will continue to bring these discussions, and we will definitely be on here to continue to encourage people who go through life issues. And this was definitely one of the life issues that all of us go through. So just be blessed, and we will see you next time on Save Our Descendants. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.